Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the GCNC Worldview. I'm really excited about this week's episode because not only do I get to talk to someone who is well known around the world as an icon in the global cannabis industry, but it's also someone that I consider a friend and in many ways a mentor when looking at leadership in the industry and navigating sort of incredibly challenging uh, business challenges and flows over the years. I feel like, Nancy, I probably don't even need to introduce you, but I will anyway. Welcome to the podcast, Nancy Whiteman. I'm former CEO of Wana Brands out of Colorado, one of my favorite brands in the industry. And Nancy, you are truly one of my favorite people in the industry. So thanks so much for carving out time, even in sort of the post-Wana era for you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And I think I'm going to make my children listen to that introduction. That was very, thank you.
Perfect. Well, however it's useful to you, feel free. So I wanted to first just start by, asking how things are and what you're up to since stepping down as CEO of Wana. I know Joe Hodis, who I have a lot of respect for as well, has taken the reins over there, and from what I can tell, is going gangbusters as well. But what have you been focused on since stepping down?
Well, it's been a little bit of a gradual transition for me. So
Yeah.
I officially sort of stepped down at the end of May, and Joe took over. And I remained very involved for sort of the transition period. And now, obviously the team is incredible and strong and wonderful. And so I'm stepping back more. I'm still on the board of Canopy USA,
Hmm.
which is the subsidiary of Canopy Growth that holds all of their US entities. So that's Wana and Jetty and Acreage. So I remain on that board, so I remain involved, but obviously the team in Wana needs no support from me except whatever moral support and guidance I can give them, but they're all amazing. So that's what I'm doing on the Wana side of things. I was very fortunate with the transaction with Canopy that I was able to start a foundation, a family foundation, which I named in honor of Wana Brands, the source of the foundation.
Yeah.
And so I'm having the opportunity to put more time into that. And that's really a joy for me to be able to give back to the industry, but also to the world and to share my good fortune with
That's
others
amazing. Yeah.
and travel and just trying to spend more time with friends and family.
Yep. Tell me a little bit about the foundation and what the goals are of it.
Yes. So we have a variety of what we call impact areas. And unlike some foundations, we chose to have multiple impact areas. And they're all things that kind of come from my heart. I think that many family foundations reflect kind of the passions of the founder, and the Wana Brands Foundation is no different. And in many ways, they're an extension of what we were doing on the corporate social responsibility side of things. Of course, we can fund it more robustly now
Right.
than we could through the company. But some of the impact areas that we really focus on are mental health
Hmm.
and substance abuse. And related to mental health and substance abuse, we fund a lot of research, and specifically around cannabis and psychedelics,
Hmm.
which I think we are going to find that psychedelics are already proving to be and will continue to prove to be some very robust treatment options for a variety of mental health and substance issues. We do a lot of work with food security and also food waste. And food waste is an interesting one because it overlaps into sustainability.
Right.
3% of the food that we produce in the United States is wasted. And that has enormous environmental implications, both for producing the food and then for all of this food in the landfill giving off methane. So we work with a variety of organizations that not only provide food security, but they also prevent food waste, and food redistribution is a key part of what they do. Of course, social equity and social justice coming from the cannabis industry are very dear to me. And so we support a variety of organizations for expungement and a variety of other social equity things. We work a lot with homelessness and people who are in need of shelter.
Yeah.
Um, and I think one of the things I would say about the foundation, there's other areas too. I'm not giving you the exhaustive list, but we really look for organizations that understand the intersectionality of all of these issues, right?
Mhm.
Generally, what you see is that none of these things happen in isolation. A person doesn't wake up one morning and find themselves homeless, right? There's a
Right.
variety of other things that are going wrong in their life. So we really look for organizations that are taking innovative approaches to working with their clients and uh, are taking more holistic approaches to things.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things we focus on.
I love that, Nancy. And one of the things that I often talk to our GCNC members about, and other businesses, and frankly, anytime I'm asked to talk to students, is this notion of doing well by doing good is
Mm.
something that I wish more people would keep sort of front and center. Um, Not only in the nonprofit sector and in how they are able to support foundations like yours, but also in our day-to-day business leadership. And I think that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about your style, um, is that you could always tell that yes, it's important to be profitable, but it's also important to be able to be proud of how that's happening and what your business is doing, and to stand for something uh,
Yeah,
that can make an impact and a difference in people's lives. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, but I think personally, I think that's one of the reasons why Wana has been so successful, and frankly, why your leadership team probably can navigate so well now, because you led them and taught them, and were able to coalesce a team that rocks. They
we
do
do.
great. They
Yeah.
do great. So, um, when you think back to how all of that started, um, and what the original seed was for building Wana, what was the original vision? Because I have to imagine that you had some inkling of where you wanted to go, but I think those types of ideas always evolve. And so where did it start?
Well, I think the operative word that you just used was inkling, because I would probably be um, falsely patting myself on the back to say that I had some grand vision when we started. It was actually not like that. It was truly serendipitous. Uh, one of my children had a friend over for a play date, and I was talking to the friend's dad and asking him what he was doing because he was a commercial real estate development. This was 2010, not a great time for commercial real estate in Boulder. And he told me that he had started an infused soda pop company. And I let's just say I was no stranger to cannabis, but I was a stranger to the terminology of medical cannabis. So I said to him, "What's it infused with?" I didn't even know what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And so he explained it to me. And we ended up sharing a kitchen for a brief period of time and then kind of went our separate ways. But the truth is, I had always used cannabis recreationally, and I really didn't understand the power of the plant. And
Mhm.
so it was a revelation to me when I began to get feedback from people about how much our products were helping them. And then it really was like a light bulb going off. It's like, oh my God, this is real, you know. And then I really got very, very fascinated by the plant and all the uses of the plant. And so it truly was an evolving thing. It isn't really like I would be, not truthful if I said I went in with like a grand vision of what I was going to do. But I think one of the things about me is that I don't feel the need to have everything figured out ahead of time. I'm very comfortable with just doing the next right thing. And that's really, in some ways, the story of Wana is just trying things, failing miserably in some situations, seeing what succeeded, taking what succeeded, and leaning in heavily to the things that were working, and always trying to innovate and always trying to be a little bit ahead of where the industry was going. So, for example, on the product development side of things, we noticed gummies as a category very early. Um,
Mhm.
and so we got into gummies. And at that time, there was another company in Colorado that was basically buying gummy worms and such off the shelf and just spraying them with hash oil. And
Uh,
I thought, well, we can do that better. We can make them from scratch. We can infuse it in the product itself. And so we kind of got a head start on that whole category without really knowing that it was going to turn into kind of the killer category of edibles, which it did.
okay. Yeah.
Um, and then within the gummy category, we were very early on in what now sounds ridiculously primitive, but having class specific options, adding CBD, adding functional ingredients and making use case specific products, adding the option for a quick onset. We were, if not first to market, very early to market in all of those areas and ratio products, et cetera. So, and then I would also say that we were definitely way ahead of the curve in terms of licensing models and getting to other markets quickly. So I
Yeah.
think we did not have like a big grand vision, but one of the things about being a small business is that you can be very agile and you can move quickly on stuff, and that's really what we were good at.
Yeah, I see, I mean, not just in cannabis, but I'm not all that young anymore, and in my previous, career, I saw this same problem where you have founders and entrepreneurs who hit these plateaus, and then they can't get it up to the next level, right? They sort of plateau out, and then either it just stays there for however long, or it dies. How were you able to keep taking it to that next level? I mean, what was it that allowed your style, your leadership, your team to be able to go, all right, so we've hit this, and now we've got to innovate to the next thing to keep going? Because to me, that's a whole different mindset than you frequently find in business.
Yeah. It's an interesting question because I think, particularly in cannabis, I think there has to be an inherent fascination with the plant itself to keep doing that. But the reality is that, sometimes people tell me that I'm very humble, and I explain to them that I have plenty to be humble about because I'm very aware of what I'm good at, but also really what I'm not good at. And so I think what allowed us to keep going was my recognition of my own limitations and my ability to attract a really talented team of people.
Mhm.
And you know, and people who I often say when I was interviewing people, I often say about somebody, oh, that person has a Wana personality. And
Mhm.
by that, I didn't mean that they had a similar personality because a lot of my team and we're all quite different from each other.
Quite different. Yep. All very cool and super strong in their own ways, but you're
Yes.
right. Yeah.
And everybody has a passion for the plant. Everybody um, really is grounded in integrity and taking personal responsibility and accountability and treating others with respect. And I just would know intuitively when I was meeting somebody like that person is going to add value and they're going to fit with the corporate culture. And
Mhm.
I ended up being just incredibly fortunate with some of the people who joined Wana and were able to really get Wana to the next level, whether it was Mike Hennessy with product innovation, or Joe with all the wonderful things he's done for marketing, and Eric, who's, a sales genius, and Kelly, who has just transformed our operations, and Sandy, who uh, has made us financially competent and financially strong, and Steph, who led our out-of-state expansion team, and so many more people than I can actually even mention. But it really, not to be corny, but it is all about the team. It is all about who you surround yourself with.
Yeah. I I couldn't agree more with that in my experience. I mean, you will find companies that are monetarily successful that have different leadership styles than that, certainly. But um, normally, I think success comes with making sure that you're lifting all boats. I mean, being able to really bring all of the bright minds to the table, collaborate. And I also think those types of companies are the ones that have longevity, not
Mm.
flash in the pan, right? And certainly Wana Brands is evidence of that. It's not very often I get a chance to talk to somebody that founded the company, built it through so many stages with a great team, and then is really able to talk about this great exit that then feeds this next thing with your foundation. I love that arc, Nancy. It's a great story to be able to see, but so many amazing lessons to be learned from that. And when it comes to failing, I tell people fail forward as much as you
Mhm.
possibly can. And it seems like that philosophy is certainly one that you took inside Wana as well.
Well, I always say that it's only a failure if you didn't learn something from it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and being able to let people do that internally as well to a degree. Uh,
Mhm.
let people discover uh, maybe better ways to run their own departments or their own work. So I think that's great. Um, that the GCNC and Worldview is, focused on not only the US and North American markets, but really how we navigate around the world. I know Wana expanded into Switzerland and has done some good things there. But as you look at sort of that global landscape and the future of not only Wana, but brands in general in cannabis, so what's your assessment of the global marketplace? How do you see the future of cannabis through that lens?
Well, I'm trying to remember the that great Martin Luther King quote, that the arc of justice is slow but bending in the right direction, or something like that. I kind of feel that way about global cannabis. It's clearly happening. I think
Mhm.
it's happening at a somewhat slower pace than many of us had hoped.
Yeah, of course.
Um, but there are glimmers, everywhere. Germany, of course, is about to have its own election, and is likely to go a little bit more conservative. So it'll be, I think, Germany is the bellwether for Europe, of course.
Right.
But I think we're going to just continue to see cannabis take hold in the same way that it has in the United States. I just was reading an article today about how cannabis is replacing alcohol and prescription drugs for many people in the United States. It's just an efficacious plant, right? And ultimately, you can't fight what is reality, right? And I think that
Not forever anyway.
not forever.
Right.
The rest
Eventually
of the world,
reality catches
right?
up.
Eventually, reality catches up, and I think the rest of the world will get there.
Yeah.
It's just going to require patience.
Yeah. And I would agree. I mean, I spend at this point probably 65-70% of the year abroad in different markets and watching trends. And um, they're all directionally headed in the same way. I think in some ways, well, I wouldn't really wish this for our businesses. I think in some ways, taking a slightly slower approach is probably okay, because it brings into a lot of different markets a little bit more pragmatism,
Mhm.
which is helpful. As you were talking about things that you're supporting through the foundation, looking at efficacy and the medicinal side and really doing the research to prove it out, um, while it's annoyingly slow, helps ensure the future of markets and our ability to compete within them. And that's true of psychedelics as well. And I think watching that communication bridge happening between those two markets is very interesting. With psychedelics moving forward faster in a lot of ways, because it's not overcoming the same propaganda campaign that cannabis had to deal with. So, um, I am appreciative in a lot of ways of the pace of the market globally. Always happy to see it move faster, but
Yes.
uh, it's good. So that's great. And as you move forward, and it's the beginning of the year, Q1, everybody's trying to figure out what is it that we're doing for the next 12 months. Um, it's always a very arbitrary date to me, but that's fine.
Yeah.
When you were looking at operations for the forward year, what would be sort of your best piece of advice for people trying to plan into 2025 and beyond?
Well, I think we're in a fascinating point right now because of the rise of the hemp-derived THC market. And I guess if I had a word that I think about a lot right now, it's probably optionality, right? I think um, and by that, I don't mean that we're all a bunch of magpies and we should go chasing after every shiny thing, because when you do that, you lose focus, right? But the reality is we have so many unknowns from a regulatory basis that I think it just makes sense, where possible, for companies to leave themselves the option to play in both the regulated space and the hemp-derived space.
Yeah.
We honestly don't know what's going to happen regulatorily speaking with either sector. The plant is the plant, the compounds are the compounds, right? And if your mission is to bring the power of the plant to people, I think it makes sense to leave yourself the option to go in both directions.
Yeah. And from what I can see, I think that's wise advice. Also, the further you get away from the US and the debate of hemp versus cannabis, and you get into other markets, you can have a more botanically correct
Right.
discussion, right? And
Yes.
and as you do that, it really does become evident that what you just stated is true. Like, it is about the plant. Yes, there are slight differences in terms of cannabinoid mix and other things, but the truth is we're talking about um, the same plant, and we need to keep that front and center and not get distracted by the whatever the political winds of the day are.
That's right, because these are primarily political distinctions, not chemical distinctions, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about it that way, it removes a lot of the, if people are assigning morality to any of it, that's a bunch of hooey as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Yeah, and me too. And I can appreciate that a lot. I love the fact that you're continuing to support the industry and build all of these different initiatives through your foundation. I am excited to see what Wana does next. I'm always interested to see what products are coming out and which markets and countries and all that they're looking at. And I know you still have some involvement in light ways, of course, but involvement there. So it's always a pleasure, Nancy, to get your perspective and hear what's on your minds, because it never fails to illuminate mine a little bit more, which is great. So thanks for coming on today. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody out there in podcast land for listening. I think it's always important for us to support the businesses, but also the nonprofits and the foundations, and do well by doing good. And Nancy Whiteman, certainly a great example of that. for all of us in the cannabis industry. So thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, have a great one. We'll see you on the GCNC Worldview.